Do you remember the time when your thumb actually had a dull ache after dialing a long-distance 7-digit number? When a Friday night date didn't just happen, it required a Wednesday night commitment? And when privacy wasn't a setting on an app, but meant stretching a 15-foot tangled phone cord as far as it would go into a hallway closet? Today, we're taking a journey back to the 1970s. We're going to look at the rituals, the manners, and the tactile reality of a decade that lived in the here and now. We're exploring how we talked, how we ate, and how we treated one another before the world got so fast. And stick around, because later in the video, we're going to discuss a very specific, almost entirely forgotten rule involving a gentleman, a hat, and an elevator, and why breaking it in 1975 was considered an absolute social disaster. Number 1. The Herculean task of the rotary dial. Before speed dial made us impatient, calling someone was a physical feat. In the 1970s, from the sunny porches of Arizona to the small towns of Arkansas, we didn't just tap a name, we earned our conversations. Bell Systems even issued pamphlets teaching us the proper way to use the instrument. Did you know they instructed us to keep the mouthpiece exactly 1.5 inches from our lips? Deliberation was the name of the game. Remember the sheer heartbreak of getting to that 7th digit, having your finger slip on a 0, and having to hang up to start the entire mechanical process over? It taught us patience. We didn't waste time on "you up" texts. If you were going to spend 3 minutes dialing, you had something real to say. Number 2. The shared mystery of the party line. Privacy is a modern luxury. In the 70s, many of us still lived with the party line. You shared a circuit with your neighbors. It required a high degree of courtesy and a silent agreement that you wouldn't hog the line. Remember picking up the receiver to call your best friend, only to hear Mrs. Higgins discussing her potluck recipe? You'd have to quietly click the hook down and wait your turn. Of course, sometimes the temptation was too much. You'd stay on the line, breathing softly, just to hear a minute of neighborhood gossip. It was the original social media feed, only much more local. I have to know, did you grow up with a party line? What was the most interesting thing you ever accidentally overheard? Tell us your eavesdropping stories in the comments. Number 3. The Wednesday deadline for dates. In the 1970s, dating had a rhythm. If a gentleman wanted to take a lady out on a Friday night, the social statute of limitations expired on Wednesday. If you called on a Thursday, you were implying she was your second choice. If you called on Friday, well, that was just plain insulting. In homes across the country, from the humid nights of the South to the mountains of the West, the Wednesday deadline was a rule of respect. It gave people time to prepare, to dress, and to value the commitment. Remember the nail-biting anxiety of sitting by the kitchen phone? If it hadn't rung by 9 p.m. on Wednesday, you knew your Friday would be spent with a book or your siblings. It was a time when a plan actually meant something. Number 4. Slow-cooked sanctuary. The Crock-Pot revolution. The 70s signaled a shift in how the American family gathered. We moved away from the formal, multi-course rigidity of the 50s and embraced laid-back luxury. At the center of this was the Crock-Pot. Debuting in the early part of the decade, it was the ultimate set-it-and-forget-it tool. Do you remember that specific feeling of walking into the house after a long school day and being hit by the heavy, savory scent of a pot roast that had been simmering since breakfast? It was more than just dinner. It was a sensory hug. It made the house feel like a sanctuary, a place where the world slowed down and the meal was ready whenever we were. Number 5. The low-slung lounging, beanbags, and conversation pits. Furniture design in the 70s was a rebellion against the stiff-backed chairs of our parents. Designers wanted us to lounge, to commune, and to relax. This was the era of low-slung living. We had beanbag chairs that were impossible to get out of, and sunken conversation pits that looked like architectural craters filled with pillows. Remember the struggle of trying to stand up out of a beanbag without looking like a flailing turtle? We traded formality for a cozy, slightly messy comfort. We sat closer to the floor and, by extension, closer to each other. It was a decade where the living room was designed for talking, not just staring at a screen. Number 6. The 8-track click. Music was a physical, chunky reality before it was a digital file. In the mid-70s, the 8-track was the king of the road. It gave us the freedom to choose our soundtrack, but that freedom came with a price: the click. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You'd be right in the middle of a searing guitar solo, your windows rolled down, and suddenly, clack, clack, the machine would switch programs. There would be a 3-second void of silence while the head moved, and then the song would pick up right where it left off. It was a technical flaw that we all just accepted. It was part of the charm of the era, a reminder that nothing is perfect, and sometimes you just have to wait for the music to find its way back to you. Number 7. The moral duty of the thank you note. In the 70s, gratitude wasn't a like or an emoji. It was a physical obligation. The handwritten thank you note was the gold standard of etiquette. Whether it was for a birthday gift or a simple dinner invitation, you had a 48-hour window to get that note in the mail. Do you remember Mom making you sit at the dining table with a box of stationery and a book of stamps? She wouldn't let you go outside to play until every note was written, addressed, and licked. We learned that saying thank you required effort, and that effort was what distinguished a meaningful relationship from a superficial one. We were taught that another person's time and generosity were valuable. Number 8. The Google of the den, encyclopedia sets. Before the internet, information lived in massive leather-bound volumes that you usually bought from a very persuasive door-to-door salesman. Owning a set of encyclopedias was a status symbol. It told the neighbors that your family was committed to culture and education. Remember the weight of those books? If you had a report on the solar system or the American Revolution, you'd pull down volume S or R and pray the information wasn't 20 years out of date. The smell of that thin, glossy paper is something a tablet can never replicate. It was a world where knowledge felt heavy, permanent, and precious. Did your family have a set of World Books or Britannicas? Which volume did you read the most? I spent way too much time in the D volume looking at dinosaurs. Let us know yours. Number 9. Navigating the art of getting lost. Traveling in the 70s was an adventure in geography. We didn't have a calm robotic voice telling us to recalculate. We had paper maps that were impossible to fold back into their original shape. Getting lost wasn't a crisis. It was an opportunity to pull over at a gas station and consult the oracle, the massive, grease-stained map on the counter. We had to pay attention to the world. We looked for the big red barn or the crooked oak tree to know where to turn. We built a mental map of our country that wasn't just a blue dot on a screen, but a series of landmarks and memories. Number 10. The formal handshake and introductions. In the 1970s, social interactions were governed by a hierarchy of respect. You were taught that a gentleman never offered his hand first to a lady. He waited for her to initiate. When you were introduced to your father's boss, you were told to stand up straight, look them in the eye, and give a firm but not crushing handshake. It was our first lesson in professional maturity. We were taught that the way you presented yourself was a reflection of your family and your character. It wasn't about being cool. It was about being present and showing deference to those who had come before us. Number 11. Tupperware parties, socializing, and storage. Before online shopping, we had the Tupperware party. It was a brilliant hybrid of social gathering and commercial endeavor. But it was more than just selling plastic bowls. It was a neighborhood ritual. Do you remember the specific pop and burp of that plastic seal? Watching our moms gather in the living room with avocado green and harvest gold containers, sharing recipes and gossip. It was a time when domestic life was celebrated as a community event. If you didn't bring that fix and mix bowl back from a potluck, it was a major social transgression. Tupperware wasn't just storage. It was a thread in the social fabric of the suburban 70s. Number 12. TV trays and the living room theater. As the 70s progressed, the formal dining room began to lose its grip. Friday nights were for the living room theater. We'd unfold those wobbly metal TV trays, you know the ones, with the floral or wood grain patterns. Remember the excitement of having a TV dinner in an aluminum tray? The smell of the Salisbury steak, the peas that were always a little too watery, and that tiny, scorching hot compartment of apple cobbler. We'd sit on the floor or the sofa, eyes glued to the tube, while the house was quiet except for the canned laughter of the show. It was a special treat that felt high-tech and futuristic at the time. What was your go-to TV dinner? Was it the turkey with stuffing or the Salisbury steak? And did you ever accidentally knock over your TV tray? I think we all did, at least once. Number 13. The Code of the Hat. Open loop, closed. Now, let's close that loop on the teased protocol. In the 1970s, the Code of the Hat was in its final elegant sunset. A man wore his hat in public, but removed it the moment he entered a private dwelling. But the elevator rule was the most fascinating. If a man was in an elevator in an office building, it was considered a public space. The hat stayed on. But if he was in an apartment building elevator and a lady entered, the hat had to come off immediately. It was a knight raising his visor for the modern world. It was a small, silent gesture that said, "I see you and I respect you." It's a level of nuance that the internet era has almost entirely swept away. Number 14. Public decorum and the personal bubble. In the 70s, physical boundaries were a sign of good breeding. Hovering or standing too close in a line was considered an act of aggression, or at the very least, extreme rudeness. We were taught to give people their bubble. Remember the quiet respect of a grocery store line back then? People didn't scroll on phones to avoid eye contact. They stood patiently, offering a polite nod or a brief comment about the weather, but always maintaining a respectful distance. We were taught that other people's physical space was sacred. It was a quieter, more spacious way of moving through the world. Number 15. Scheduled TV and the summer rerun. Finally, we have the way we consumed stories. In the 1970s, entertainment was a use it or lose it proposition. There was no watch it later. If you missed the annual airing of The Wizard of Oz or the series finale of your favorite show, you were out of luck until the summer reruns. This created a communal viewing experience. Everyone in the country was watching the same thing at the exact same time. On Monday morning at the office or the schoolyard, everyone was talking about the same cliffhanger. We valued those moments more because we knew they were fleeting. We didn't have content, we had events. Which show did you never, ever want to miss? Was it MASH, All in the Family, or maybe The Mary Tyler Moore Show? Tell us your must-watch 70s shows in the comments. The internet gave us speed. It gave us connection, but it might have cost us a little bit of our soul. The 1970s were a bridge, a beautiful wood-paneled bridge between the old-world manners of our parents and the high-speed future of our children. It was a time of laid-back luxury, where we still took the time to write a note and tip our hats. If these memories brought a warm smile to your heart today, please give this video a like. It helps our community of nostalgic souls grow. Subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss our next trip down memory lane. And most importantly, share this video with a sibling or an old friend. Remind them of the time when the world was a little slower and a lot more mindful. Thank you for watching, and as always, stay nostalgic.